A lot of people had bicycles. Most people didn't have cars those days. So they needed some boys to look after them when they go to watch the match or they go to the big bar to drink. When they came out, then we already, when you are young, we are very sharp. We could probably have 50 bicycles. And I would pin every bicycle to an individual who left it with me. And then you clean it so that you get more favors. If the bicycle is clean, instead of getting a ticket, you probably get a sixpence, which is more, you see. So it was a very good way of making a bit of extra money. Yes, but we were also very keen supporting our team, the Highlanders. But those days, there was so much belief that some people would, before a match is played, they'll bring some juju so that our team loses. But then we were deployed by the elders to make sure that nobody comes near the gate post. Because if you did, put some charms, and we really believed it so. That juju was very important in soccer.
It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is ZPRA. Today is a Thursday, and the program is the ZIPRA Liberation Archives, where we look at the stories of the ZIPRA who contributed in the liberation struggle. It is a sad day because we are looking or talking about the life of the late national hero Tshinga Judge. He was known by many people, and he was many things to many people. Tshinga was born on the 3rd of July, 1941. His mother named him Stutuzo. He says it was because he had lost a sister. His father called him Othniel. Ubaba Tshinga was a pastor, and his name was Judge Dube. So when Tshinga went to school, probably before he went to school, his friends called him Tshinga. And he says he doesn't really know what it meant. But I guess he liked the name Tshinga more than the names that he was given by his parents. So when he got to school, Wachelama teacher was Tshinga. So then he went to the liberation struggle, of course, and he was given the name Embassy. So at the end of the day, he's one of the guys who had many names. So we say rest in peace to Stutuzo, Othniel, Judge, Tshinga, Embassy, Dube. He really had a life. He lived a life, and there's many stories to many people. We don't agree, or many people don't agree in terms of his role in the liberation struggle or post-independence. But what is obvious is that he participated. He, after finishing school, Solus, he says he wanted to go to Ghana for whatever reason. That's where Pan-Africanism was at that time. So he left Zimbabwe via Zambia, trying to go to Ghana. And when he got to the Congo, there was a bit of a civil war that was going on there. He couldn't proceed. So he stayed in the Congo for some time. Tshinga Kulele Sabaten. So he had, the roots in the SDA church. And he says the SDA families in the DRC kept him for a while. They allowed him to paint there, doing menial jobs. And later on, when things were not working out, he went back to Zambia, where he went to Ndola and worked around Ndola there in the factories and all those kind of things. It was during that time that he then linked up with Abandube ZIPRA, or ZAPU then, who had gone to Zambia and joined the ranks of ZAPU, and he started his activism in politics. So it was in the late 60s, and he trained somehow. I think he got trained in Russia or somewhere there, and he got or he was trained in communication. So during the first, I would say the first battles, that included the joint venture or the joint collaboration between ZAPU and the Special Affairs. The army wing or the liberation wing or the fighting wing or the military wing of ZAPU by then was known as the Special Affairs, and this is what joined forces with Umkhonto weSizwe or ANC's Umkhonto weSizwe to form the Lutuli detachment, and the guys tried to go in Zimbabwe, and we call that the Hwange campaign. So Tshinga was part of the Hwange campaign at that particular time. He played a role as in the communications. So what happened then in the 70s is always subject to debate and so forth. But having talked to a number of ZAPU guys and ZIPRA guys, including one Jack Mpofu, the late Jack Mpofu that we interviewed, in 1971 there was a split in ZAPU where Chikirema left, and we are told that Tshinga Judge and the other guys I forget his name, the guy who's now the ambassador in Russia. So they left ZAPU then and joined Flores Labo Chikirema. So it's not clear how long Tshinga stayed in Flores, but at some point he went to Russia, furthered his education in Russia, and came back in Zambia. When he came back in Zambia, he was no longer with Flores, and he had his involvement in ZAPU, working with ZAPU structures. But his role in ZIPRA post 1971 was more on the political side than on the liberation front, because he never then came back to Zimbabwe or was not deployed in Zimbabwe or was not really part of the structures of ZIPRA. But he was in Zambia with the political leadership, and of course we see his role again after the death of Nikita Mangena, when Lookout Masuku and the Dabengas take over. So Tshinga is also there, and in 1979 he comes back to Zimbabwe with many others. He's integrated into the National Army, and he, I wouldn't say rise through the ranks, but he becomes a colonel in the liberation struggle, or not in the liberation struggle, but in the army after 1980, and he plays a role there. So most of this information that I'm talking about is also in his book, Quiet Flows, the Zambezi, and he talks about his role in 1980. The other guys in ZAPU, and he mentions it as well in the in 2020, I had the luck, or I had a chance to interview Tshinga, and we talked about these issues, and this is part of the interview that we're going to play today. So after 1980, Tshinga had a good relationship with Solomon Mujuru, who was the army general, and you realize that when there was the hunting down of ZIPRA commanders being arrested after the arms catches, some of them being killed, Tshinga was not affected, because he had a good relationship with Solomon Mujuru. Actually, in his book, he says there was a time around 1982 or 83 where Solomon Mujuru wanted to fire everyone who was ZIPRA. He wanted to fire all the ex-ZIPRAs. And he says Javan Masego, who was the commander then, had failed, or he had not done anything, or he had almost agreed to this plan. And he says it was himself, Tshinga Judge, who went and talked to Solomon Mujuru to reverse his decision of firing ZIPRA Wonke, who were in the National Army. We know that they were not fired, so he played a bigger role. Later on, Tshinga Judge joins the Zimbabwe Defense Industries, where he was really in charge of the defense industries, and we know the stories of how he played the role in arresting Simon Mann, who were on their way to stage a coup in Guinea, Malambo. And in his book, he says, despite the role that he played, the president weGuinea wabuya nika abantu imali laphana umgabe, and he says yena vele katholanga cent, and you are saying he's still bitter that despite the fact that he played a significant role in making sure that the coup does not happen, he never got any cent from that. But he then becomes, at some point he was the MP for Makokoba, and he becomes the Minister of Veterans. And once in a while, post 2017, he was very outspoken about what was going on. And just a few months ago, he was saying that he thinks that it is ill-advised for some people to be campaigning for the current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, to go for his third term. So at 83, he really played a very big role in the Zimbabwean politics post-independence and before independence. His role in the liberation struggle is argued by many people. There are many people who have different stories to say, but that is the life of Tshinga Judge. And in this program, we are going to hear from him when we had an interview with him in 2020. Please. Your mother called you or named you Studios, and your father named you Othaniel. You became Tshinga Judge. Why did you pick your friends' names?
Well, when you are young, you don't have much choice making very important decisions. You go by what everybody else says. My real names had the meaning, because Tutuzo, as I told you, as I have said, was given to me by my mother because I lost my sister. And when I was born, it was like a comfort to my mother. So I was called Studios. But Othniel was my father's choice. He was very religious, and Othniel is a biblical name. So he gave me that. But both names didn't really catch up. The one that was the nickname Tshinga. And I never bothered what it meant. Everybody called me Tshinga. And you realize that those days we didn't have birth certificates. When we were born, we never got any birth certificates, which would otherwise have been the right time to correct these names. So not until when I got my first ID, then I just took what was normally used, that is Tshinga Judge.
Was that did to do anything with your character? Maybe
I hope so. Yeah. I think so. That's what my peers thought. Yeah, that's what they thought.
Now, reading your book, you were interested in politics from an early age.
Yes.
It's this Solusi, going to with your father to shop, and this white lady who talks about, saving you. And what is it that made you to be so interested in politics?
I became conscious about politics because of listening to others. You always get a lot of interest when people talk. I used to sell in Bantumira. We would go to a pub and sell newspapers. We would listen to people like V.P. Burombo. They're giving some lectures like Socrates, that you see we people are oppressed. But we knew we were oppressed because this was an everyday complaint from everybody. We knew that something was not right. I might not have been very clear exactly of what to do, but I already got that it was clear that we were oppressed.
There's something interesting that you talk about, going to Papa Fields to guard bicycles. Where there's a soccer match, because not so many people had, cars. But you put it in a way that these guys were so proud of their bicycles and probably will remain cleaning them. I mean, how was the sight of all those bicycles outside the stadium?
Yes, you see, a lot of people had bicycles because people didn't have cars those days. So they needed some boys to look after them, where they go to watch the match or they go to the big bar to drink. When they came out, then you already, when you are young, you are very sharp. We could probably have 50 bicycles, and I would pin every bicycle to an individual who left it with me. And then you clean it so that you get more favors. If the bicycle is clean, instead of getting a tiki, you probably get a sixpence, which is more, you see. So it was a very good way of making a bit of extra monies. Yes, but we were also very keen supporting our team, the Highlanders. But those days, there was so much belief that some people would, before a match is played, they'll bring some juju so that our team loses. But then we were deployed by the elders to make sure that nobody comes near the gate post. Because if we did, they would put some charms, and we really believed it so, that juju was very important in soccer.
You at this age, you wanted to go to Ghana. What was up with Ghana at that particular time? What was interesting about Ghana?
His influence again. As I say, we had a teacher who was very political. He was Zambian. He always talked about Ghana and showed us about books. There was a book called Africa Shall Be Free by Kwame Nkrumah. So he would tell us, take time to explain that in Ghana now they don't have any colonialists. The people are able to govern and run their country. And that aroused a lot of interest. So it was, it created such an interest that I felt that I would have got the ultimate if I go to Ghana and be a free man and be able to see the people ruling themselves when we're all slaves here being ruled by whites.
So you don't go to Ghana, you end up in Zambia. At that time, this is the time when ZAPU is recruiting or conscripting people into their wings, and maybe by force or so, Operation Chikuo. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I actually proceeded up to Congo, but you see, it was just adventure because I didn't have any passport. I'd never seen a passport before. It was just talking to the people, and they help you, they write a letter that will help you and serve as a passport. But Congolese also don't understand English. When you get this letter, it's properly typed and with a stamp, they think it's an official document when it means nothing. So, so I couldn't proceed because there were problems in the Congo. I decided to go back to Zambia. I got a lift from some missionaries, and I went back to Zambia. There was a lot of activity. But by the way, at that time, Zambia was not yet free, but there was a lot of political activity. It only became independent in 1964, but that was just earlier than that. So I obviously had to join the structures, the ZAPU structures. There were a lot of them, a lot of activity, and even became a secretary of the branch or so. But you see, the Chukua side came much later. Much later, when we had come from training, we were recruited to go for training. Most of our commanders in ZIPRA were all recruited from Zambia because it was ripe, you know. They were matured politically and they didn't have problems. Most of them were working for the mines. So when we came back after training and deployed inside the country, when we went back, you find that we had some problems. The OAU said, okay, you fellows claim to have a lot of cadres whom we can train for you in Dar es Salaam and so forth. We said, yes. There are a lot of them. We can't finish them. But we're not saying this from the hot air of words. Some politicians would organize some meetings, rallies, and at the end of the rally they would say, oh, those who want to go and join, you find others would even lift their legs to show that they're very keen. But now, when OAU said they were ready to train us, they sent some trucks from Tanzania to come and pick up our chaps. You would hardly find any. They began to give excuses. My wife is not well, my children need to be sorted out at school, and a lot of other excuses. My pension, I must first finish my pension. And the trucks will be waiting there, these OAU trucks. So until we said, look, we'll be embarrassed because we've told these people that we have a lot of cadres who have volunteered to come. So we decided that we're going to use this conscription. So because we had addresses anyway. Because once they said they were interested to go to then we would register them and their house numbers and so forth in thousands. But when time came for them to go, they were not there. So we just followed that list, which was drafted during the rallies. And at night we would just go grab them and so forth.
So, during this, the early 60s, the current president, Emerson Mnangagwa, joined his ZAPU. Were you together at one point?
The president was ZAPU Kata. But ZANU was formed in 1963 when he was out in training in China. But when some of these cadres who came from China knew about this new formation of ZANU. Some of them crossed over because a lot of the leaders who were in ZAPU had gone for ZANU. I met him when he came from training in Zambia, in Lusaka, in our party offices, and we talked to them, but we're not yet trained. So we're very envious about them, that these people have already got some military training and they're able to fight a war. So this is what.
Thank you very much for following the program or watching this program. This was just part of the interview that we did with Tshinga Judge in 2020. If you want to know more about the man, his life, and his contribution to this country, you can head to our YouTube channel, site ZAPU, and search for Tshinga Judge. We have a longer version of the interview that we did with him. It's actually in two parts. But also don't forget to like or subscribe to our Facebook channels, to our YouTube channel, so that you don't miss any programs. What I can say is that documenting the history of anyone, where's the ZIPRA veterans, is not always easy, because there are many versions. And also when people pass away, when people die, when they still have families, there are some certain things that people are uncomfortable about in terms of talking about it. So it's always controversial to talk about some things. You hear whispers about this and whispers about that, but history is like that. It's always difficult to tell the history of people. Iko maybe kulula kakhulu ukukhuluma ngehistory yeBhayibheli ngoba uJesu akasekho, abafundisi bakhe abakho. It is also easy to talk about the history kaLobhengula, but even kaLobhengula abantu bakuzondela ngokukhuluma kabi ngoLobhengula. So documenting history is not easy. But I hope that by doing these interviews, by talking to the ZIPRA veterans that we are able to talk to, it's easier ukuthi bezikhulumele bona their liberation credentials, what they did, what they didn't do, and all what we can do is to fill the gaps. Once again, we say to the national hero, rest in peace. You fought a good fight, and it is up to us to take where you left and continue the journey. My name is Ndebele. Let's meet again in other programs.
Am I